The forest was on fire. And while everyone was running, an orange cat discovered a litter of puppies. What it did next: move everyone to tears. The air hung heavy with the scent of pine and the acrid tang of smoke. It was late August in the small town of Oak Haven, nestled in the heart of the Sierra Nevada mountains in California. The summer had been unusually dry, turning the surrounding forests into a tinderbox. Wildfires were a constant threat, a fact of life that the residents had learned to live with. But this year, the danger felt particularly acute. Old Man Hemlock, 85 and a retired firefighter, sat on his porch, his weathered face etched with worry. He'd seen his share of fires in his lifetime, and he knew the signs. The wind was picking up, shifting direction, and the sky had taken on an ominous orange glow. He could feel it in his bones. This was going to be a bad one. Across town, 16-year-old Maya Ramirez was volunteering at the local animal shelter, cleaning cages and playing with the dogs. She loved animals, and she dreamed of becoming a veterinarian one day. She was particularly fond of a litter of golden retriever puppies that had recently been brought in, their mother a stray who'd been found wandering near the edge of the forest. Down the road, the Peterson family, John, a school teacher, his wife Mary, a librarian, and their 8-year-old daughter Lily, were preparing for a family barbecue. Their home was on the outskirts of Oak Haven, bordering the national forest. They loved the peace and quiet of their rural setting, the proximity to nature, but they were also acutely aware of the fire risk. And then there was Ember, a stray orange cat, lean and muscular with wary amber eyes. She was a familiar sight in Oak Haven, a ghost that flitted between houses, scavenging for scraps, accepting handouts from a few kind souls, but belonging to no one. She was a survivor, independent and resourceful, a creature of the shadows. The first reports of the fire came crackling over the radio. A lightning strike, miles to the north, had ignited the dry underbrush. Fanned by the strong winds, the flames were spreading rapidly, heading straight towards Oak Haven. Evacuation orders were issued, sirens wailed, and the town erupted in a frenzy of activity. People scrambled to gather their belongings, load their pets into cars, and flee to safety. The air filled with the sounds of panicked shouts, barking dogs, and the roar of approaching flames. Old Man Hemlock, despite his age and his aching joints, refused to leave. He'd fought fires his whole life, and he wasn't about to abandon his home. He stayed on his porch, his eyes fixed on the approaching inferno, a grim determination etched on his face. Maya, at the animal shelter, helped to load the animals into crates, preparing for a desperate evacuation. The golden retriever mother, sensing the danger, whined anxiously, nudging her puppies with her nose. The Petersons, caught in the sudden rush of evacuees, found themselves stuck in gridlock on the narrow mountain road. They could see the smoke billowing on the horizon, feel the heat radiating through the car windows. Lily clutched her favorite stuffed animal, her eyes wide with fear, and Ember, the orange cat, watched it all from the edge of the forest, her senses on high alert. She could smell the smoke, feel the heat, hear the growing roar of the flames. She knew instinctively that danger was coming, and somewhere, deep in the burning woods, 3 tiny puppies were whimpering, their mother gone, their fate hanging precariously in the balance. The fire was getting closer, and soon it would consume everything in its path. The golden retriever mother, whose name was Goldie, was desperate to escape. She was a family dog and had been raised to protect and care for her pups. Goldie had always been a devoted mother, fiercely protective of her litter. She'd chosen a secluded spot beneath a fallen tree, a half-buried hollow that offered some protection from the elements, to give birth to her puppies. It was a safe haven, far from the noise and bustle of the town. But as the fire approached, Goldie knew she had to get her puppies to safety. She tried to carry them one by one, but they were too young, too weak to be moved easily. The smoke was thickening, the heat intensifying, and the roar of the flames was deafening. She nudged them, whimpered, and tried to coax them out of the hollow, but they were too frightened, too disoriented to follow. She knew she couldn't stay, but she couldn't leave them behind. She was torn, her maternal instincts battling against the overwhelming need to survive. She looked around to see if anyone around to ask help, but no one, only a stray orange cat. In a final desperate act, Goldie barked loudly, a series of sharp, urgent barks, hoping to attract attention, hoping that someone, anyone, would hear her and come to their rescue. Then, with a last anguished look at her puppies, she ran, following the path she'd cleared earlier, hoping to lead the fire away from her hidden litter. It was a gamble, a desperate attempt to buy them time. Ember, the orange cat, had witnessed the whole scene. She'd been watching Goldie from a distance, observing her movements, sensing her distress. She'd seen the puppies, tiny and helpless, huddled in the hollow. Ember had never had kittens of her own. She'd been spayed as a young cat, a procedure that had left her feeling empty, incomplete. She'd watched other cats with their litters, feeling a pang of longing, a sense of something missing in her life. Now, as she saw the puppies alone, vulnerable, and threatened by the approaching fire, a powerful instinct kicked in. It wasn't a maternal instinct, not exactly, but something akin to it. A fierce protectiveness, a need to help, to save these tiny creatures from the inferno. She knew the risks. The fire was close, the smoke was thick, and the heat was intense. But she couldn't just stand by and watch them die. She had to do something. She crept closer to the hollow, her body low to the ground, her senses on high alert. She could smell the fear of the puppies and hear their faint whimpers. She could also smell the smoke, feel the heat radiating from the approaching flames. She knew she didn't have much time. She had to act quickly, decisively. She had to get these puppies to safety, and she had to do it alone. She looked around, hoping for a sign, a clue, anything that could help her. She saw the path that Goldie had taken, the faint scent of her fur lingering in the air. She knew that Goldie had gone to seek help, but she also knew that help might not arrive in time. She had to rely on her own instincts, her own courage, her own determination. The fire was near. Ember didn't hesitate. She darted into the hollow, her lithe body navigating the tangle of roots and branches. The puppies, startled by her sudden appearance, whimpered louder, their tiny bodies trembling. She nudged them gently with her nose, trying to reassure them, to calm their fears. She licked their faces, their fur, cleaning away the soot and ash. She purred, a low, rumbling sound that seemed to soothe them. She knew she couldn't carry them all at once. They were too small, too fragile, and she needed to be able to move quickly. She decided to take them one by one, carrying them to a safer location, away from the approaching flames. She gently picked up the smallest puppy, a tiny female with a patch of white fur on her chest, by the scruff of her neck. The puppy yelped in surprise, but Ember held her firmly, her teeth carefully avoiding the delicate skin. She carried the puppy out of the hollow, moving as quickly as she could through the smoke-filled forest. She headed towards the edge of the woods, towards the town, towards the faint sounds of human activity. She knew she needed to find help to get these puppies to safety. The journey was perilous. The smoke was thick, making it difficult to see and breathe. The heat was intense, radiating from the burning trees and underbrush. Embers feel like fiery rain, scorching her fur and singing her whiskers. But Ember pressed on, driven by a fierce determination, a primal urge to protect these helpless creatures. She stumbled, she coughed, she choked on the smoke. But she never faltered, never loosened her grip on the tiny puppy. After what seemed like an eternity, she reached the edge of the forest, emerging into a scene of chaos and destruction. Houses were burning, cars were abandoned, and people were running in all directions. Ember, exhausted and disoriented, hesitated for a moment, unsure of where to go, who to trust. She saw a group of firefighters battling the flames, their faces blackened with soot, their bodies weary from the relentless effort. She started meowing loudly, insistently, trying to attract their attention. But her cries were drowned out by the roar of the fire, the shouts of the firefighters, and the general pandemonium. Then she saw him, Old Man Hemlock, standing near a makeshift command post, his eyes scanning the burning forest. He was no longer fighting fires himself, but he was there, offering his expertise, his support, his unwavering presence. Ember, with the puppy still clutched in her jaws, ran towards him, meowing frantically. She dropped the puppy at his feet, then looked up at him, her amber eyes pleading, desperate. Hemlock, startled by the sudden appearance of the cat and the puppy, knelt down, his old joints creaking. He gently picked up the puppy, examining it closely. It was barely alive, its breathing shallow and ragged. "Where did you come from, little one?" he murmured. Ember meowed again, then turned and started running back toward the burning forest, looking back at Hemlock, urging him to follow. Hemlock, understanding dawning in his eyes, followed the cat. He knew instinctively that there were more puppies, that this brave, unlikely creature was trying to save them. He followed Ember through the smoke and debris, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and admiration. He trusted the cat's instincts, her unwavering determination. He knew that she was leading him to something important, something precious. And he was right. Ember led him back to the hollow beneath the fallen tree, where the two remaining puppies were huddled together, whimpering with fear. Hemlock carefully pulled them out, cradling them in his arms. They were weak, dehydrated, and covered in soot, but they were alive. He looked at Ember, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You're a hero, girl," he said, his voice choked with emotion. a true hero. He gathered the puppies, and together with Ember, they headed toward safety. The 3 puppies, rescued from the brink of death, were rushed to the temporary animal shelter that Maya and the other volunteers had set up in the town's community center. The building had been spared from the fire, and it had become a refuge for both people and animals displaced by the blaze. Maya, exhausted and covered in soot, was overjoyed to see the puppies. She immediately set to work, cleaning them, warming them, and feeding them with a special formula using tiny bottles. The puppies, 2 males and a female, were named Ash, Cinder, and Spark, a tribute to their fiery ordeal. They were weak and dehydrated, but they were fighters. They clung to life, their tiny bodies fueled by an instinct to survive. Ember, the orange cat, refused to leave their side. She watched over them constantly, her amber eyes filled with a fierce protectiveness. She licked their fur, purred softly, and curled her body around them, providing warmth and comfort. The sight of the cat and the puppies huddled together in a makeshift nest of blankets touched the hearts of everyone who saw them. It was a symbol of hope, of resilience, of the enduring power of love and compassion in the face of disaster. The veterinarian, Dr. Emily Carter, who had appeared in the previous stories, examined the puppies and Ember. She confirmed that the puppies were severely dehydrated and suffering from smoke inhalation, but with proper care, they had a good chance of survival. She treated Ember's minor burns and gave her a clean bill of health. "She's a remarkable cat," Dr. Carter said to Maya. "She saved those puppies' lives. She's a true hero." Maya nodded, her eyes filled with tears. She'd always loved animals, but she'd never witnessed anything quite like this. The bond between Ember and the puppies was extraordinary, a testament to the power of interspecies connection. As the days passed, the puppies grew stronger. They started to eat with gusto, to play with each other, and to explore their surroundings. Ember remained their constant companion, their guardian, their surrogate mother. She taught them how to groom themselves, how to play, and how to navigate the world around them. The story of Ember and the puppies spread quickly through Oak Haven and beyond. Local news outlets featured their story, and soon the unlikely family became a symbol of hope and resilience for the fire-ravaged community. People came from miles around to visit them, to offer donations, and to marvel at the extraordinary bond between a cat and 3 puppies. The Petersons, whose house had been spared from the fire, became frequent visitors to the shelter. Lily, in particular, was captivated by Ember and the puppies. She'd spend hours playing with them, reading to them, and simply sitting with them, her heart filled with love and admiration. The question of what to do with Ember and the puppies became a topic of much discussion in Oak Haven. Everyone agreed that they should stay together, that separating them would be cruel and unnecessary. But finding a suitable home for all 4 animals was a challenge. The animal shelter was already overcrowded, and the puppies, once they were old enough, would need homes of their own. And Ember, despite her newfound maternal instincts, was still a stray, a cat who was used to her independence. The community rallied together, determined to find a solution. They held fundraisers, organized adoption events, and spread the word far and wide, hoping to find a loving home that would welcome all 4 animals, a place where their unlikely family could stay together forever. The fate of the 4 was yet unknown, but there was a sense of hope in the air. The search for a permanent home for Ember and the puppies proved to be more difficult than anyone had anticipated. While many people were touched by their story, few were willing or able to take on the responsibility of caring for 4 animals, especially a cat and 3 growing puppies. The puppies, Ash, Cinder, and Spark, were thriving under Ember's watchful care and Maya's dedicated attention at the shelter. They were playful, energetic, and full of life, attracting plenty of interest from potential adopters. But Maya and the other volunteers were adamant that the puppy should not be separated from Ember, at least not yet. Ember, meanwhile, had become a local celebrity. Her story had captured the hearts of people across the country, and donations poured into the shelter, earmarked specifically for her and the puppy's care. She remained devoted to her adopted litter, grooming them, playing with them, and guarding them fiercely. She seemed to understand that she was their protector, their family. Old Man Hemlock, who had first discovered the puppies thanks to Ember, became a regular visitor to the shelter. He'd sit for hours watching Ember and the puppies, a wistful look in his eyes. He'd lost his own dog, a beloved companion, in the fire, and he felt a deep connection to these animals, a shared experience of loss and resilience. One day, Hemlock struck up a conversation with John Peterson, who was visiting the shelter with Lily. They talked about the fire, about the devastation it had caused, and about the remarkable story of Ember and the puppies. "They need a home," Hemlock said, his voice gruff but filled with emotion. "A place where they can stay together, where they can be safe and loved." John nodded in agreement. He and his family had been discussing the situation at length. Lily was desperately attached to the puppies, especially to Spark, the smallest and most vulnerable of the litter. She'd begged her parents to adopt them, but they knew it wasn't practical. They already had Buddy, their golden retriever, and their house wasn't large enough to accommodate 4 more animals. But the thought of separating Ember and the puppies, of breaking up their unlikely family, weighed heavily on their hearts. They felt a responsibility to these creatures, a sense of connection that transcended the practicalities of pet ownership. As they talked, an idea began to form in John's mind. He looked at Hemlock, at his weathered face, his kind eyes, his obvious love for animals. He knew that Hemlock lived alone in a small house with a large fenced-in yard. He also knew that Hemlock was grieving the loss of his own dog. "Mr. Hemlock," John said tentatively, "have you ever considered adopting another dog?" Hemlock looked surprised. "At my age?" he said. "I don't know, son. I'm not sure I have the energy for a puppy." "What about 4?" John said, a smile playing on his lips. "What about Ember and the puppies? They need a home, and you seem to have a special connection with them." Hemlock was silent for a moment, considering the proposition. He hadn't thought about getting another pet, not after losing his beloved Buster, but the idea of taking in Ember and the puppies, of giving them a home, of filling the emptiness in his house and his heart, it was tempting. He looked at the puppies, tumbling over each other in their playpen, their tiny tails wagging furiously. He looked at Ember, watching over them with her calm, protective gaze. He saw the bond between them, the unbreakable connection that had formed in the midst of tragedy. I don't know," he said, his voice wavering. "It's a big responsibility." "We'd help you," John said. "We'd be there for you every step of the way. We could help with the feeding, the vet bills, the training, everything. It wouldn't be just you. It would be a community effort." Lily, who had been listening intently, chimed in. "Please, Mr. Hemlock," she begged. "They need a home, and you're the best person to give it to them. You're a hero, just like Ember." Hemlock looked at Lily, at her earnest face, her pleading eyes. He looked at John, at his sincere offer of support. He looked at Ember and the puppies, their innocent faces, their unwavering trust, and he knew what he had to do. "All right," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll do it. I'll take them in. They'll be my family now." A wave of relief and joy washed over the Johnsons. They'd found a solution, a way to keep Ember and the puppies together, a way to give them the loving home they deserved. The adoption process was expedited, thanks to the support of Dr. Carter and the overwhelming goodwill of the community. Hemlock's house was inspected, a few minor modifications were made, and soon Ember and the puppies were officially his. The transition to Hemlock's home was seamless. Ember, who had always been wary of humans, seemed to instinctively trust the old man. She followed him everywhere, slept at the foot of his bed, and kept a watchful eye on her adopted puppies. The puppies, Ash, Cinder, and Spark, thrived under Hemlock's care. They grew quickly, their personalities blossoming. Ash, the largest of the litter, was bold and adventurous. Cinder, the middle pup, was sweet and affectionate. And Spark, the smallest, was a mischievous little firecracker, always getting into trouble. Hemlock's life was transformed. The quiet, empty house was now filled with the sounds of playful barks, happy meows, and the gentle rhythm of life. He had a purpose again, a reason to get out of bed in the morning, a reason to smile. He wasn't alone anymore. He had a family. The Johnsons remained a constant presence in their lives. They visited regularly, helping with the chores, playing with the puppies, and providing companionship to Hemlock. Lily, in particular, was overjoyed. She'd found her best friends in Ash, Cinder, Spark, and a second mother in Ember. She'd often spend hours at Hemlock's house, reading stories to the puppies, playing fetch with them in the yard, and helping to care for Ember. Buddy, the golden retriever, also became a part of the extended family. He'd visit with the Johnsons, and he'd quickly bonded with the puppies, playing with them gently, teaching them doggy manners, and providing a calming presence. He even tolerated Ember, accepting her as the matriarch of the unusual pack. The community of Oak Haven continued to support Hemlock and his adopted family. People would drop off food, toys, and blankets. They'd offer to help with yard work, errands, and anything else that was needed. The story of Ember and the puppies had brought them together, reminding them of the importance of compassion, kindness, and the enduring strength of community. 1 year after the fire, Oak Haven held a special ceremony to commemorate the anniversary of the disaster and to celebrate the town's recovery. Hemlock, Ember, and the puppies were the guests of honor. They were hailed as heroes, symbols of resilience, hope, and the unbreakable bonds that can form in the face of adversity. As Hemlock stood on the stage, surrounded by his unlikely family, he looked out at the crowd, his eyes filled with tears. He'd lost his home, his possessions, and his beloved dog in the fire. But he'd gained something even more precious, a new family, a renewed sense of purpose, and a deeper connection to his community. He thought of Ember, the stray cat who had braved the flames to save 3 tiny lives. He thought of the puppies, who had grown into healthy, happy dogs. He thought of the Johnsons, who had become his dear friends, his support system. He thought of the people of Oak Haven, who had rallied around him, offering their love, their kindness, and their unwavering support. He realized that he wasn't alone. He'd never been alone. He was surrounded by love, by compassion, by the enduring warmth of human connection, and he knew with absolute certainty that even in the face of tragedy, even in the darkest of times, there was always hope, there was always love, and there was always a reason to keep going. The fire had taken much, but it had also given him a gift, a circle of warmth, a family forged in the embers of fear and bound together by the enduring power of love.